Right, funding rates. SMEs get 75% of their costs. Research organisations 75%, universities 75%. It's not like the UPSRC rates. We're now talking about, before under FP6, FP5, it was 100% of the marginal cost. That's similar type funding. It is now 75% of actual costs. But I think it's with a maximum of 60% of indirect costs. Now, these aren't overheads, and I'll explain to anyone who really wants to know the difference, but we are now talking of 75%. Everyone else, which is really large companies of over 250, we're down to 50% funding. Down to, I think that's still pretty good. And there's some other different funding available, 100% for coordination support actions, which are sort of network actions. Fundamentals. This isn't bottom up, it's top down. The Commission publish work programs. Work program for many of the themes will be published next month, July. It involves partners from multiple countries. I'll talk about that. By means of a project of a specific type, you can have collaborative projects, you can have large-scale integrating projects, you can have coordination support actions. I've mentioned those. I'm just giving you a general flavour of what's going on. I've said it's in response to calls for proposals, and your funding comes through a grant agreement with the European Commission. Co-financing, I'll put this all up. This was a slide put together by a colleague of mine, but it makes a very good point of not just thinking about what am I going to get out of it in terms of what's coming into my bank. What this basically says is if you're one of 4 partners, you in the UK maybe have an eligible cost, say, I don't know, 600,000 euros. If you're an SME, you're only putting in 150,000 euros of that. The whole of the project might be 5 million euros. So for 150,000 euro contribution from yourself, in kind, you're getting access to 6 million euros worth of research. IPR, obviously the organisations who develop the IPR keep the IPR, but it's very important and it's mandatory. There's a consortium agreement which discusses IPR, who owns the IPR, but the principle is that all of the members, the partners in the project, have equal rights of access to exploitation of the total expenditure, so of the total project. What that really means is if you haven't got the IPR but you're in the project, there should be a way that either you have free access to use of that information, you don't own the IPR, or you should pay a reasonable amount to use that. Right, Commission's work programme, I mentioned that, it's found on Cordis. That's the European site which provides all the information. You can go on there and you can find an existing call. The reality is that if you have to go on there to find out that the call exists, you possibly are too late. So, because what happens is that everyone, if you're in, you're in. No, what happens is that if you're within the networks and you're keeping close contact with your NCP or through the KTN or through the regional, the RDAs, you will have already been provided with information about what calls are taking place, and you will have received drafts of that. You certainly will have from me. So I provide, as soon as I get any sniff of a draft work programme, I send it out to all the knowledge transfer networks, to all the industry associations, to all the RDAs, so that they are able to then also disseminate that information around the UK to anyone who might be interested. When you go on there, you can download all of the documentation. Yes, it's European, and yes, it looks thick and bulky, and do I really have to read it? I would say you do have to read much of it, but once again, talk to the national contact point, who's free, or she's free, talk to them, and they will be able to work you through it, help you through it. That's what I say. Our role is to help. Once again, you can download it in various languages. Projects involve partners. The main thing is it's 3 independent legal entities from 3 different member states or associated states. So that's the 27 member states plus associated states, which includes Iceland, Switzerland, Israel, Turkey, some of what they call the candidate countries. I can't remember them all. But the reality is that any organ, as long as you have that minimum, any country in the world can participate in a framework project. The only thing that separates them out is who gets funded and who doesn't. And those who do not get funded are in the main the obvious ones, and some not too obvious, but Japan, North America, Australia, New Zealand, they're sort of what they call the developed countries do not get funded. However, a lot of, I'm not sure now what, I think they call them ICPCs, International Collaboration Partnership countries do get funding. There we're talking about India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, China, North African countries, South American countries, all those others, and the information is made available to you before you start. Finding partners, this is a crucial bit, a very important bit, because we're talking about European collaboration, and people always want to know, well, who do I collaborate with? Well, there was some research done, don't ask me by who, but saying that 50% of partners were people that people already knew. They were in their supply chain. Immediately people think of collaboration. I've known it over years. The immediate thing they say, well, I'm not going to start collaborating with my competitors. No one's asking you to. You know, it's supply chains. It may be with potential competitors if you're doing very, this thing called pre-competitive research. Fiat are involved with projects with Volvo. I mean, they're still happening, but it does not need to be that way. Collaborate with your customers, collaborate with your suppliers, collaborate with your friends, and friends of existing contacts. The other way of finding partners is obviously through the NCPs, it's through Cordis, it's through RDAs possibly, it's through the KTNs. There are a number of ways. Once again, talk to us and we can guide you through that. The proposal. When I mentioned that documentation, you click the various boxes to download things. This is, apart from the work programme, this is the second most important, possibly the most important thing to download. It's the guide. And there is one for each of the themes, and so if you have one for biotechnology, don't think, well, that'll do me for surface transport, because it won't, because it's specific to the theme. And it lists the funded countries, and it provides the glossary, which is obviously is important because we're talking about Europe. It describes the proposal in detail, describes submission, and describes the evaluation. I get so many people come to me and say, oh, this is too difficult, I've got to write this proposal for Europe. Should I pay this organisation to come to me £50,000 or something to write a proposal? No, it's not that difficult. It actually tells you exactly how to write a proposal. It tells you exactly how many words, how many pages it wants you to write on each aspect of the proposal. And secondly, if we're talking now and you've never come across FP7, it's likely that you wouldn't be the one wanting to write the proposal anyway, because you'd be a partner in a much larger project. So don't get put off by it. So the three evaluation criteria is science and technology, quality, implementation, and then the impact. They're massive on impacts now under the framework programme. They were fed up of the years and years of providing research funding which never went anywhere. In FP6 it was all about objectives, and now it's all about outcomes. I think it's now all about impacts. What is the impact of this research? And they make it even easier as well, in that you have to complete a proposal, as I mentioned earlier. And would you believe the evaluation criteria align with the actual exam questions? You would also, when I mentioned why a lot of proposals fail, or I mentioned a lot of proposals fail should be in that 1 in 5, is because they decide they would rather tell the Commission what they want to tell them rather than actually what they want to hear. And once again, the Commission say that they want information on concept of objectives because they have an evaluation criteria called soundness of concept and quality of objectives. So it's really not that difficult.